Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate. Harinarayanam, Harinarayanam, Narayanam Bhaja Mudamate. Harinarayanam, Harinarayanam, Narayanam Bhaja Mudamate. Geyam Gita Nama Sahasram, Deyam Shripati Rupamajashram. Geyam Gita Nama Sahasram, Deyam Shripati Rupamajashram. Deyam Dina Janaya Chavitam, Deyam Dina Janaya Chavitam, Niyam Sajjana Sange Chittam. Deyam Dina Janaya Chavitam, Niyam Sajjana Sange Chittam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. Harinarayanam, Harinarayanam, Narayanam Bhaja Mudhamate. Narayanam Bhaja Mudhamate. Narayanam Bhaja Mudhamate. So continuing our last 2 weeks ago discussion on being how to spontaneous, how to be spontaneous in nature, how to practice spontaneity. We talked about where we are giving charity. So in Bhagavad Gita, Dhanam is one of the key characteristics that Krishna talks about in the 18th chapter. How one should be charitable in nature. When one is charitable in nature, they are thinking above and beyond their own personal needs and also the personal needs of their own immediate family. So you're going above and beyond and extending that dhanam, extending that charitable trait that exists within all of us to somebody who is unknown to us, the society at large. The more we do and practice dhanam, the sattva guna, the sattvic aspects starts to grow in us, because that helps us grow spontaneously without our own realization. And that's the reason why I recommended you take 1% of your annual salary and then you split that out amongst the husband and wife, and then you spend that money every year however you feel it right, either for a temple or for Manushya Dharma. So one of the key things to do is practice dhanam. The three gunas that he talks about, Rajasic, Tamasic and Sattvic, if you have to understand with a story, I shared this story many months ago in one of these sessions. Once there was a king who went into the forest for hunting, and along the way it became late into the night and he got lost. He didn't know what to do. And at that time there were 3 robbers who came to him and who wanted to steal all his belongings. Once they got all his possessions that he had, one of the robbers suggested, let's just get rid of him. The other person said, no, let's not do that. Let's just tie him down to the tree and let's escape. And finally they decided that all the three of them they said that we will tie you down to the tree and then we'll head away. So they decided to tie him up with the tree. And a few hours goes by and the king is very, very afraid. He does not know what is going to happen to him. Wild animals, things like that. And at that time the third robber suddenly comes back and he unties him. And he says, now go back to where you came from. To which the king says, I do not know how to go. You got to lead the path. Help me. So he says, very well, I shall help you. I know a shortcut. And the third robber then takes him to the outskirts of the forest before the kingdom comes in. And then says, if you follow this path straight, you shall reach your kingdom. The king is very happy, very grateful. And he says to the robber, come with me, I will shower you with a lot of gifts. So to which the third robber says, no, I cannot. Because if I come, I'm still a robber in the eyes of your people. And they shall capture me. I do not need any more. So please, thank you. We have already taken enough from you. So the first robber who wanted to kill the king is similar to tamasic. That which will bind you down, which will make you very heavy in nature, lazy in nature. The second robber who wanted to tie you down towards to the tree, it is rajasic. A lot of actions will happen, but all those actions are very binding in nature. It's like a whirlpool. How much ever you would like to want to get out of that, you'll again and again the actions, it's not the actions which will bind you down, but it is the fruits of the actions which will kind of draw you back into the whirlpool. The third one is sattvic guna. The sattva guna, which is purest in its form, that pure form will try to liberate you while you are doing your actions day in and day out. But it will bring you a level of awareness where you are not supposed to get attached to the fruits of your action. Karma phala. Karma phala tyagam. Again, one of the verses that Krishna talks in Bhagavad Gita, tyagam. Let go of it. Renunciate the fruits of your action. Sattva guna, very liberating. But then Sattva guna also is a binding agent because it will only take you up to the path to the liberation, but then it will kind of hold you back. You got to move away, above and beyond Triguna. And at that time, you get liberated. Now these three gunas, all of them exist in all of us in just varying proportions. 30%, 50%, 20%, that kind of a combination. And the more we practice charity, spontaneity, the sattva gunas automatically starts to increase in nature. We also talked about children last 2 weeks ago. One of the key things that we have to do is whatever that we do, we are centered in what we are doing. That which comes to us naturally, those are the kind of activities that we should do naturally. Because anything other than what does not come naturally to us, that will create a lot of problems for us. We took the analogy of being an engineer versus a doctor. If naturally I am an engineering minded person, I am put in a doctor's profession, I will suffer. Paradharmo bhaya pahaha. Because my natural tendency, my natural trait is to become an engineer. And granted, there are times when just because of the way the life is, we are forced to do things sometimes, even though we do not have any other option, because life is what gives us. In those cases, what do? Just go with the flow. But then always be aware of the fact that that is not your natural trait, that is not your natural centeredness. And you will know it because day in and day out, that work that one is doing will become full of burden. Instead of going and saying I'm playing at work, we'll say I'm working at work. When you work at work, we work like a donkey. And then life becomes burdensome. But then you'll know it. Be aware of it and send the letter to the universe, because we are a product of Prakriti, product of the universe. Send a letter to the universe saying, guide me, and the guidance shall come. How it shall come? You shall experience it. It happens all the time. Why? Because we talked about Ichha Shakti, one of the 8 Siddhis. Intuition, the power of intuition. We all have it. We have our gut feel, which is above and beyond the 5 senses. You kind of harness that Ichha Shakti which has been given to us, which Prakriti has provided us with. And how we gain confidence in that Ichha Shakti is just look at your own life. Of all the numerous achievements that we have had up to this point, it's all because of Ichha. मन में हमने एक बीज बोया, engineer बनना है. That we wanted to be a doctor, we wanted to be a scientist, we wanted to be a businessman. And numerous such ventures have come out very successful. Including wanting to get married to our beloved, wanting to have children, wanting to do so many things. So if you notice, we have enough data points in our own life where we have been very, very, very successful. And that is because of the sankalpa. The sankalpam that we make, the promise that we make, that seed that we sow in the brain, in our mind. So all these things are connected to each other. Being centered, being spontaneous, all these things will automatically start to generate that enthusiasm within us, and Sattva Guna will start to grow. If you become, people often ask, why is it wrong to eat the fruit of the action? Why is it? It is not incorrect to consume the fruits of our action. It is when we start getting attached to the fruits of those actions, it is then that the problem starts to happen. And how does the attachment comes? The attachment comes either in terms of the 5 children of desire: anger, greed, jealousy, hatred, envy. When those things are not there, you can eat the fruit and nothing will happen to us. It is when these negative tendencies start to kick into us, at that time, we ought to know that we are getting attached to the fruits of our action. भाई हम इतना काम किए हैं, then why should I not फलत्यागम क्यों करूँ मैं? It's okay, but don't get attached to the fruits, the negative children. And we will again know it. Intuitively we will know it. When that happens, what happens is, a lot of times, we do not remember that we are going through that motion. That I am either getting greedy, or either I am getting angry because I did not get it. And when those kind of things happen, we lose ourselves, and that's at that point is where we have etched our mind with vasana, etched our mind with a like or a dislike for a particular thing, which stays for the rest of our life. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what happened in my life, I'm able to remember it very carefully, to the nth degree of detail. It is those events that happens. That's the, if you look at the whole, how it developed, that is the various path that is there. Danam, charity, that is what we got to practice every year. Just like how we have annualized budgets within our departments, with our engineering departments, within our companies, where we budget every year. You budget 1% of your salary, because that's the first thing that we can do. And do most of the danam, if you are able to, in the form of anna. अन्नदान. अन्नदान जो है वो सर्वश्रेष्ठ है, the best. Why? Because I can give you $100 and then a thought immediately will come, you could have given me another $50 more. You're after all a rich man. But if I gave you food, and if I offered you food and served you food with all love and affection that I've cooked, once you're full and satiated, you will say, Bhagavan, thank you. May you live long. That blessing that a person gives, it is not contaminated. It is pure. So अन्नदान, however, जितना आप अन्नदान कर सकते हैं कीजिए. Pick an anniversary date, your marriage anniversary date, your wedding, your birthday, or we talked about Pitr, the days when your dear ancestor, grandfather or mother or father, if they passed away, pick those days and you want to do annadan. And do not second guess it. So the second thing about charity is, once you give charity, do not question what is happening to the dhan that you have provided. Because the moment you have questioned it, the sattva guna has gone. Then rajoguna has come in. Because it is going to pull you down. Don't question any of your intent. जब आप देते हैं, दिल खोल के दीजिएगा. And don't worry about it, what happens to it. And in some cases people ask, they say, oh, sometimes it may be a fraud or something like that. Okay, you will get to know about it. From next time onwards, you will not give it to that organization or to that person or something like that. Just leave it at that. Often when India, especially when we have beggars, sometimes we give the food and or the money or something like that. We kind of second guess sometimes what is happening to them. We don't know what's happening. If you notice that there is a modus operandi, a pura gang is there behind who has a cut of the money that they collect and things like that. God knows what's happening to all that. So if such a situation were to arise, where your contributions have gone for a waste, you think it's gone for a waste, don't think it has gone for a waste. You did it for a particular reason and it was done, and you move on. You learn something from it and you move on. The more you participate in the charitable aspects, either it is Manushya Naraseva or Narayana Seva, the daya, the compassion will also start to grow in you. Compassion. When you are very intent and when you take care of your immediate loved ones and friends and yourself, your wife and children and grandchildren and so forth, it is passion. When that same passion becomes universal in nature, it becomes compassion. Because compassion cuts across boundaries of language, of nations, of relationships. It is universal in nature, and compassion starts to grow. When the compassion starts to grow, automatically the love starts to bloom. When the love starts to bloom, we start to become very, very, very harmonious just within ourselves. And just because we are very harmonious within ourselves, we exude that harmony. Whatever you have inside is what shall come out. That's what will come out. And that will become infectious in nature. And slowly the society starts to improve and a lot of good things starts to happen. If you look at the laws of physics and we talk about light, if you were to talk about, people often ask, how can you say this within my mind? If I'm good, then how can only goodness come out of me and things like that? Whatever happens inside is how I perceive the world on the outside. If I feel very happy within myself, I just feel everything is so happy going. Everything is so beautiful in nature. But if I am sad within myself, then I just see only sadness around me. It's not to say that sadness and happiness is not existing, but we just view it from our own. हमारा दृष्टिकोण क्या है, उस पे निर्भर करता है. So talking about laws of physics, like you were wearing a dark colored shirt, I think it's black in color. It is black in color because all the 7 colors are impinging on that. The light reflection is happening. All the 6 colors are being absorbed, and since it is black in nature, only the black is being reflected back. All the other colors are being absorbed. That's the reason why it's black, because that is thy nature. Everything else gets absorbed. So when the world throws upon us different aspects of emotions, right from sadness to happiness, whatever is our inner state of mind, we absorb all the other frequencies, and only that frequency which is existing inside me gets reflected on the outside. Laws of physics, very scientific in nature. If I am happy and you throw sadness and different varying levels of other emotions inside me, if I am happy, I will absorb all the things and I will only emanate happiness back. Laws of physics. That's how you draw the analogy between the two. And if you were to follow these aspects of what Krishna talks about in the chapter 18, Danam, Daya, renunciation, Tyagam, then the Sattva-guna starts to slowly improve and rise within our own self. And everything after that we do, when we come to the temple, when we do our prayers, when we do mantra ucharan, all those things take on a very, very special meaning. The more you love the divine energy, the more the divine energy shall love. And it is beautiful after that. Because after that you are not alone. And it's and it's not a philosophical discussion or a question of faith or a question of belief. It's now a matter of experience now. That experience becomes so strong with the divine that proof, or whether I should have faith, belief, all those things just fall apart. It doesn't need it anymore. And then life is bliss. Just recently I was trimming down the lemon trees, and then it was laden with the fruit. And as I was cutting it, I had to carry it around, and I plucked most of the fruits, the lemon fruits, and I put it in the basket. But when I have to lift that, I noticed there were still some fruits on the branches, and it made it so heavy. The branches by itself were very light. The fruit was very heavy. So if you carry all the fruits and not share it with others, it becomes very heavy. It becomes very burdensome. If by the grace of God, by the grace of the divine efforts that you have put in, say if you have a lot of money, if you have lots of other things that you can do for the society, if you just hoard it and keep it within yourself, it becomes very burdensome. That's one of the greatest things that I've noticed in the US is many people, industrialists, when they become very rich, including Bill Gates and so many other people that we see, the philanthropy is very, very beautiful to witness. You just share it. You just given up that amount of money which is there. So whatever you feel comfortable within your own means, you share that above and beyond. So if you notice the cycle of a plant, where the plant grows up and then we have the fruits. Before the fruit comes, we have the flower. Flower is very, very light. And flower is also the highest expression of love. Highest expression. We always give flowers when we are in love. Love for our mother, love for our beloved, love for our children. When a child is born, we try to bring in lots of flowers. Flowers are very light, final expression of a plant. It epitomizes nature's best expression of love and compassion. Flower. Similarly, when there is death, at that time we offer flowers. When there is a wedding that happens, we offer flowers. It gladdens our heart when we see the beautiful hues of all the various ranging colors that comes by, and when it is put on somebody or when it's put on Bhagavan, it just gladdens our heart. It's a gladdener. Fruit on the other hand, थोड़ा देर के बाद I cannot take any more fruits. I can only take only 4 or 5 fruits, after which I will just fall down. It will bear me down, that fruit. And within the fruit, if you notice, there is a seed, and then life starts over again. So the seed, so when the fruit falls down back into the soil, the fruit is the manure, fruit is the fertilizer, fruit is the essential nutrient for the seed. It just so happens we tend to enjoy the fruits. But actually fruit is intended, that fleshy covering is not intended for us, it is intended for the fruit, for the seed, for it to grow again. Fruit and the seed. So it comes full cycle. So that's why they will talk about karma phala tyagam. Karma, the fruits of our actions, has been compared, Krishna compares that to that of a fruit. He does not compare it with phool or flower. And then he talks about tyagam, renunciation, giving that up. So if you combine this and watch the previous videos that we have discussed on various topics, these things will come in full circle. And then being centered. If you look at from a chemistry standpoint, we have electrons that is revolving around the nuclei. The farther away the electrons go into the farthest orbit, they are the most unstable. They lose energy very fast. Right? And the further, closer down they come down to the nuclei, the more stronger the binding is, the bonding happens. And then once they merge, there is complete centeredness that happens. So same thing, like for example, when we throw lattu. Lattu को क्या बोलते हैं इंग्लिश में?
Top.
हम बचपन में खेलते थे ना लट्टू. It will swirl, and then once it becomes centered, at that point it falls, and that's its resting point. It gets centered, and it is done. So all of us have got a centrist kind of a trait that exists within us. We cannot be angry all the time. We cannot be sad all the time. Our nature is compassion. Our nature is love. That's what we are. We just kind of toggle between these emotions from time to time, but we always come back to being peaceful in nature. That's how our nature is. So when we are centered on that, at that moment, we reach a certain level of harmony. And we also talked about how to gain control over anger and all that. That's in our previous videos. That's there. So that's what I wanted to share in today's session before we go into the questions and answers about charity. So let's go to the questions. So for those of us who are new, we are now trying to meet on the 2nd and the 4th Saturday of every month. We start at 5:30 sharp, and then at 7 we will conclude the session. And all questions are entertained. There's no bad question or a good question or anything like that. The only questions that I cannot answer, and I should give you that, is what happens after death? I cannot answer those because it has to be experienced. And we had a brief discussion in our last session. Because once you jump on the other side, I do not know what's happening on this side. Before I am born, I do not know what's happening. That has to be experienced. And anything outside the purview of our experience, if it is shared, it then becomes a matter of belief or a matter of faith. So let's talk about things that are within our scope. between life and between death. All those things we can entertain and we can share. So let's go to the questions.
Is there any concept like rebirth? People say, okay, he's not satisfied. He came back. Like, is it true? Is it really happens? Rebirth, punarjanam?
Punarjanma hai.
है?
But don't believe me.
पता कैसे चलता है कि ये पुनर्जन्म है उसका, जिसको मतलब जो आया है, कैसे पता चलेगा? उसको पता चलेगा, बाद में पता चलेगा, या पहले दूसरे लोगों को पता चल जाएगा?
ओ पता नहीं चलेगा. क्यों नहीं पता चलेगा? Because of Maya. The Maya which is there, again I'm dwelling into the other extra outside of the terrestrial aspects of life. The only reason why it is not known is that because when we are born as karma bandha because of our actions. When we left this body, we had certain likes and dislikes. When we are on our deathbed, if someone were to ask us, what are your desires? There will be one or two desires only. And if it is not reaching Bhagavan, then it's almost back to square one. And we will never ever know what our desires are. But rebirth is there. Now, I don't want you to believe that. Once you start practicing what we have talked about, you will experience that also. Because one of the things that will happen is you will experience and you will defeat death. You will defeat it. Death will not be, normally one of the things is we are always afraid of death. I was just sharing this with somebody the other day. Just like how when we buy a battery or something else, it immediately puts an expiration date. December 2012, December 2013. Imagine with the moment when we are born, the moment there is one mark over here, expiry date, 1988, December 25th. What will happen is, for all the things that we have come here, the desires that we have bought, we will stop playing those desires. We will just be focused on only one thing. Oh my God, when am I going to go from here? Because we are not told what our expiration date is, we play the game of life as though there is no tomorrow. We play endlessly, and I could be gone the next minute. We do not know that. It's because of that reason, because that the desires that we have had, we got to be able to spend those desires. It's just because of that we are not being given an expiration date. Karma bandha. Karma mukta, on the other hand, when they are born, the soul knows they've come here only for a particular purpose. And they'll just take a little karma, because without karma you cannot attach to this body. Karma is needed. Actions are needed. Desires are needed. And once their job is done, they will leave the body. Karma bandha, karma mukta. Another example that I could give is, normally people say that the children, when they are born in a family, it is not because of the parents that children are born. The children, the Atma, which takes form, the Jivatma, which comes in the form of a human body, it selects the parents. It selects the ambience. It selects the orientation of which place it's going to be born into, in order to fulfill its desires. Often you will notice that all the children that are born within the family, they are not having the same kind of an affinity towards the same thing. Parents may be doctors, parents may be into religious aspects, but then the children that are born, they have come for a very particular specific role. Somebody may turn into a musician, somebody turns into a engineer or whatever professions that we have. Businessman and things like that. If you notice also, it's very interesting, people were saying in Bollywood that the film actors and their children also are into film acting. Because the Jivatma decided that they had that affinity towards acting, that they are born in there. Why? Because it's easier for me to cultivate those habits in the presence of a acting community. If I have to be a businessman, I have to be in the presence of business people in order to be able to develop my traits. And if I have a ready-made audience, a ready-made ambience that's there, a society, I would rather be born over there. Same thing in religious aspects, in the priestly sections of our community. We have noticed numerous saints that have been born. It doesn't matter how rich or poor they were, or what class of the society they were born in. But if you notice, those parents were very devout parents. And a saint is born over there. Because it's much more easier. Otherwise, what will happen is, if one is born in some other place, they will kind of poke on him. Hey, tu kyun aisa hai? Life will become miserable. So rebirth happens because of the unfulfilled desires that comes in from this birth, or remember what we have left in our bank before we were born into this body. We talked about karma. Krishna's recommendation again, and I'm repeating that again, is do not try to figure out what karma is. You cannot figure out. Because it's very complicated. And that's the exercise that I gave you 4 or 5 months ago. If you want to really figure out karma and how complicated it is, when you go to India, buy a raw coconut with a full shell and try to peel it open and peel out all the coils one by one, and try to connect a one-on-one relationship, and you will see how frustrating it is. And then multiply that 1,000-fold, and that's what karma is. So karma in Bhagavad Gita, he says, forget it, don't worry about it. Just do your duty. Swadharma. Dharma means duty. Duty means that which you are centered on. Swadharma. Don't do paradharma. Paradharma is that which is not natural to you. Don't do anything which is unnatural to you. So he constantly talks about the Swadharma aspects.
When you're talking about Swadharma, so when Arjun, upon going to the Madhya of the Kurukshetra, so when he threw down his Gandiv and said that I cannot fight, I cannot kill my own brothers and my own cousins just for this kingdom, I want to just take sannyas. So Krishna's objection was Swadharma versus Paradharma. Is that?
Yeah, correct. And prior to that, prior to the fight for the kingdom that happened between the Pandavas and Arjuna, Pandavas and Kauravas, he said they were asking for 5 villages. When all those things didn't happen, you have to fight for it. Actively you have to resist it. Actively you have to fight it. At that time, it's no point just running away, just because your relatives are there on the other side of town and they're going to get killed. So it's your duty. Otherwise, if that is not preserved, what will happen is, he talks about again in the ending of the first chapter, is the confusion will get created within the society. Society will become very chaotic in nature. That active resistance has to kick in at that time. Until then, we are all very passive. The same situation with corruption that happens in various parts of the world. It is taken, but up to a certain point, and then after which, when it really gets to the point where it cannot be taken anymore, if the society does not uprise as a whole and then goes after it at the time, just because the relationships are there on the other side, either in the government or in other sources of authority and things like that, at that point what will happen is, it will create confusion within the society. One has to fight, the uprising has to happen. It is that to which Krishna was objecting to.